Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine, and it's time for another playlist video, and this time we're going back to 1978. 1978. It's not definitive. For those of you who are going to start to say, where's this, where's that, why didn't you include that? It's just a snapshot. And what I've tried to do with this one is pick albums. I think there could be five or six. There might be seven. I don't know. That where there's kind of more of a story to them, and it's how I feel at the moment. So in 1978, I could have picked Boston, AC/DC, at least two albums from that year. Judas Priest, Ted Nugent, at least two albums from that year. Uriah Heep, Whitesnake, Rainbow, Gillan, Van Halen, The Scorpions, Thin Lizzy. The list is endless of classic albums. Did I mention Boston? There's so many I could have picked. None of those are in this list. I've picked out Sammy Hagar. That would have been another good one. But some of these I've done separate videos. I've done one on Power Age, haven't I? I've done one on Van Halen. I've done one on Sammy Hagar, and Thin Lizzy. Some of the others I haven't. Anyway, so what have I picked? The first one from 1978 is Styx, Pieces of Eight. This is an important album for Styx, and if you're from the UK, this, for many of us, was our entry point. It's a bit like bands like Kansas. Apart from Carry On Your Wayward Son, it didn't really catch on. Well, where I was in Birmingham, it just didn't. Jeff Barton in Sounds had this phrase, although Sounds came up with the new wave of British heavy metal as a saying around this time, 1979 actually. Jeff Barton also came up with Pomp Rock Lives, Run to the Hills, and I think it was every time he mentioned Kansas, or especially Styx. How many of us started to become aware of Styx was in Sounds, the music newspaper, where they had the heavy metal chart, and they always picked some kind of random rock disco from somewhere in the UK, and tracks from this album started to appear in the listings. And for many of us, always looking to see what was trending, this is also the chart where I started to notice Bad Motor Scooter from this Sammy Hagar live album. But tracks from this album started to appear. For me and my friends, we had no idea who Styx were or what they were like. Some of them all in tune members of my peer group had already bought Equinox and had been going on about this band for some time, but it hadn't gelled until this. And it's an unusual image and cover, very mysterious, the band in the gatefold sleeve. But many of us bought this, and the tracks that kind of were in the chart were Blue Collar Man, which opens up side 2. Whoops. And the other one, bear with me as I put on my spectacles to be able to see. Blue Collar Man, which was a Tommy Shaw track. Now, quite soon, we would start to realise that certain members of Styx wrote some absolutely stonking songs. And so as I went through their back catalogue, I was kind of drawn towards certain people, Tommy Shaw being one of them, and obviously Dennis D. Young as well. But Queen of Spades was a single in the UK, and it was fantastic. But it was actually on side 1, The Great White Hope. The production, the vocals, and I'm Okay. Do you remember that? The kind of the backing vocals and the production of it. There was nothing else. There was nothing else like it, was there? Sing for the Day, The Message, Lords of the Ring. This had some absolutely classic tracks on, and I would probably say now, Renegade. It's another good one. Yeah, in fact, Blue Collar Man, Queens of Spades, Renegade, Pieces of Eight. Yeah, side 2 is absolutely killer. Produced by Styx, production assistant Barry Mraz, 1978 and A&M Records. Boy, do we need a Styx box set? I know there's that little thing with the kind of unfancy little sleeves. It's just like five albums in one little box. I've got that somewhere. But we need a proper remastered collection of Styx albums, don't we? Surely. And what was the one after this? Was that the one with Babe on it, 1979? It was, wasn't it? Which was a step down and confusion reigned. And there's some wonderful Styx albums in the catalogue, Grand Illusion, Equinox, as I mentioned, but this one is my favourite. Again, it's always the same, isn't it? Your entry point to a band is so powerful that even if the next one you listen to is technically seen as a better album, sold more, whatever, it's always the one that opened the door that has that special relationship, really. And Blue Collar Man, yeah, because I was still in this absolutely bit of a rubbish job at the time, and that was a great track. And I'm Okay was a great track. Wonderful stuff. That's Styx, the first one from 1978. What else? Another one that's yeah, I'm going to go here next. It's in my list. Starz and Attention Shoppers. I'm pretty sure that this is seen as Starz' weakest album in their entire catalogue. But for many people in the UK, this is how we found them, because this album was available in the cutout bins by the boatload. And finding other albums by Starz was actually really difficult. It's even more difficult now. We really need a Starz CD box set. But this was very clever, Attention Shoppers, because the inside of the album was a brown paper bag. Obviously, in the States, that's how a lot of you went to supermarkets, and everyone was putting a brown paper bag. In our supermarkets, there's always plastic bags. And the fact it talks about attention shoppers, it's episode. This album's a pre-recommend daily dosage of rock and roll. It's almost very kind of shoppy, I guess. But even though many people now will say it's their weakest album, because it's a doorway album for me to this band, I really like it. I know the Colosseum Rock is probably, Colosseum even, is much better album, and so are some of the others, but this, because it's the first one I bought, has an edge to it, and especially on side 2, because of X-Ray Specs. I love that track. It's got a real edge to it, and I love the way at the very end it goes X-Ray Specs in each speaker, left, right, and centre. It's excellent. And Good I Always Seek, one of the finest songs ever written about a pint of beer, and it's from the States. Good I Always Seek, Don't Think, and Johnny All Alone. This is a great song. It's a bit like the brother or sister to Pull the Plug from an earlier Starz album, but it's got a great story. It's typical kind of rock story. In rock songs, the hero of the song is always called Johnny, I think, in most songs. Johnny used to walk on the docks. It's just something that people do, and that was Bon Jovi years later. Perhaps he listened to this first. I don't know. And Hold On to the Night, Third Time is the Charm. These are kind of really classy pop, metal, rock ballad type things. And you must have thought that the band must have thought that surely they're going to break through and have major hits. There was something about rock music around this period, and especially once we get to the 80s, where as much as everyone was a rock band, the idea of having hit singles was very, very important, not only to the band, but also to the label as well. This obviously meant that a lot of bands probably diluted the kind of feel or approach they had, or the journey they thought they were on when they first formed the band. Maybe that was what happened here. But to this day, I really like this. Waiting on You, Are We There? great songs. And I think one of the first people, I think when I started doing this, Gary Garbett, he used to be, before we were called Now Spinning Magazine, on Google Plus, we had a YouTube channel called What's in Your Music Collection, and we both talked about how we both liked this album. So that is Starz, Attention Shoppers. Next from this year, having a look to see what I have lurking around me. I'm going to go for a compilation next because a lot of my friends bought this, and this was a gateway album again into the world of Steve Miller. Steve Miller had made loads of albums by the time we get to this point, but his biggest ones, of course, were the ones literally that came out just prior to this. And nearly everyone I know bought this. Oh, we need some Steve Miller. In fact, apart from the track The Joker, which greatest hits 1974 to 1978, everything is from the previous two albums, Fly Like an Eagle and the one that came after that, which at the moment has escaped my head. But Springtown, Jungle Love, Take the Money, and Rocking Me, Serenade. All of these are from literally the previous two albums, which were all recorded at exactly the same time, because Steve Miller had this approach where he thought, well, I'm going to do all the songwriting, and I'll just split the songs in two albums, so I don't have to worry about it for X amount of time. Why can't I remember what that album was called? It's the one with Jet Airliner and Thresholder from that album. Put it in the comments. It'll come back to me as soon as I press stop recording. But how many of us thought Rocking Me was just like All Right Now by Free, but obviously the same chord sequence, but totally different feel to it? A lot of people did, but I still loved it. I still love that song. Wintertime, Wild Mountain Honey, The Steak. Wonderful. And that was, for years, the only Steve Miller album I ever had. And it's of everything I'm showing you today from this year I have on CD, apart from this, because I don't think this ever made it onto CD. If it did, they would have added extra tracks. I'm still trying to work out if I can remember what the second album was that followed Fly Like an Eagle. Can't. So that's that. Next was the first, another Doorway album. In 1978, all the things I've mentioned, the AC/DCs, the Rainbows, the Gillans, the Whitesnakes, the Scorpions and everything, these were kind of a given that I would go for those, but I was equally looking for artists that were different to expand my horizons. And I'd heard about this guy for quite a while, but not bought anything by him. And it was Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band, Stranger in Town. I had heard tracks from the previous album, which is probably a better album overall. Fire Down Below was on that, and Mean Streets, etc. But this was the first one I bought, and I bought it because I bought on silver vinyl. That was more grey vinyl. I bought a single from this album, which included Hollywood Nights, and on the B-side was Old Time Rock and Roll. Hollywood Nights, off the live album that came out not long after this, is my favourite version of that track, but it does really pack a punch on this. I think Hollywood Nights is it's a great song about escaping out of the city and just following your dreams, really, and which is exactly where I was at this point in time in my life, or wanting to get away from the job I was doing. It also had a song in it called Still the Same, which I resonated with because I liked that idea. There was a kind of feeling that with my dad's kind of saying to me, you'll grow out of this. You will grow out of this. And me thinking, I hope I don't grow out of this, because if I do, then I'll be one of these people that works somewhere for 35 years and gets a gold watch, and that's it. And Still the Same was, when I think about it now lyrically, it's actually talking about someone who's still the same, and maybe it's not a good thing. But I actually thought, I don't know if anyone else did this, where you interpreted the lyrics in a way that spun it round for for what you wanted to feel it was about. And then years later, you reread them and you think that's not what he meant at all, is it? But it helped me at the time. And I think that's what Still the Same did. Old Time Rock and Roll was not one of my favourite tracks. I was kind of songs that lent back to old time rock and roll. I kind of didn't glaze over, but it seemed the chord sequences just seemed a bit obvious in a way. Ain't Got No Money, that's the Frankie Miller one, isn't it? Is really good. We've Got Tonight is a fantastic and beautiful ballad. Brave Strangers, the famous final scene. This is all about human life and Till It Shines. But the other track meant such a lot to me. Was Feel Like a Number. This one really did the work on me, really. I take my card and I stand in line. To make £1, I work overtime. Dear sir, letters keep coming in the mail. I work my back till it's racked with pain. The boss can't even recall my name. Been there. I show up late and I'm docked, it never fails. Been there. I feel like just another spoke in a great big wheel, like a tiny blade of grass in a great big field. To the workers, I'm just another drone. To Marbell, the tax people, for us of us in the UK, I'm just another phone. I'm just another statistic on a sheet. To the teachers, I'm just another child. To the IRS, sorry, that was the tax people, I'm just another file. I'm just another consensus on the street, going to cruise out of this city and head down to the sea. Going to shout out to the ocean, hey, it's me. I feel like a number. I feel like a number. I feel like a stranger in this land. I feel like a number. I'm not a number. I'm not a number. Damn it, I'm a man. I said I'm a man. That was the one. I didn't even know that song existed. I bought this because of Hollywood Nights. But Feel Like a Number was the one. I used to remember hitchhiking down to Newquay in Cornwall. I live in Cornwall now. I always wanted to live by the sea, and that was the track that I thought I've just got to get out of this town. Eddie on Hot Rods, 1977. That was, wasn't it? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm digressing. But this song, Shouting Out to the Sea, I'm not a number. Brilliant. Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. Next one is Paul Stanley and the solo album, 1978. The band released, every member of the band released solo album all at the same time. Probably seemed like a good idea at the time. But even then, not everyone had enough money to buy 4 records all at the same time. So you picked and choose. However, I have to go back and say that at this point in time, I had nothing by Kiss. I hadn't heard, apart from 1 or 2 tracks, nothing. This is the UK. Wasn't the same here. So how come I got this? Someone I knew said they played a track from an album by Paul Stanley, who was in Kiss, and that track was Tonight You Belong to Me. And this will seem really strange to anyone perhaps outside of the UK, but in newsagents that sold crisps and chewing gum and cans of pop, some of them sold records that were just like in cutout bins, like this. And every so often they'd have like a bunch of them and they'd sell them. And then it wasn't the kind of thing where you went back and thought, well, I could go and buy a record. They would be there for a while. They'd sell them all. And then they didn't sell records anymore. So it was something that just happened randomly. And this was at a newsagent near where I used to go and have my hair cut at this point. That would soon change because this was 1978. My dad was still trying to really double down and getting me to have a sensible haircut. And I remember going next door to buy some crisps and some pop and seeing this and think, oh, someone said this is really good. So I bought it. And this is obviously it's an American pressing. But I know that Ace Frehley's is seen as the best of the solo albums. But to me, again, a doorway album. This is the one. Move On. Ain't Quite Right. Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? Take Me Away. Together as One. It's All Right. Hold Me, Touch Me. Think of Me When We're Apart. Loving Chains. Goodbye. This, to me, is the best of the Kiss solo albums. It will be years, before Asylum before I got into Kiss proper. So that's how long it was. The odd single from Dynasty, perhaps. But this, to me, is a wonderful record. I've really enjoyed playing it again. And Tonight It Belonged to Me. Still, when Paul does a solo tour, anything, there are tracks from this that reappear even now. I think it's stupendous album. Great vocalist, even if you're not a Kiss fan. Paul Stanley's songs, they're the ones to me that drew. Those are the ones that drew me in to listening to Paul Stanley. How many have we got here? Oh, there's only two more. The next one is Heart and Dog and Butterfly. I keep saying 1978 as if like they're different. They're all from 1978. This is one of my favourite Heart albums. It might even be my favourite Heart album. There are two sides, obviously, it's vinyl, where side one, called Dog, is harder rock, I guess, with Cook With Fire. That's the live track, High Time, Jing Straight On. But it's side two, where I think they mix in their kind of mystic mythology, Zeppelin-esque, sprinkled acoustic stuff from Physical Graffiti or Led Zeppelin 3, with certain feel to the songs. Dog and Butterfly is beautiful. Lighter Touch, it's beautiful. Nada One has got this sense of mystery and drama, an epic feel to it, which leads into the kind of song that could have worked in Game of Thrones even, or Lord of the Rings, and that is Mistral Wind. The vocals from the sisters on that, and the instrumentation, the production, it's so different to what came later when they were desperately trying to, keep in with MTV and all that kind of stuff. This is yet another American pressing. But I love obviously I love the whole album, as I've just said, but I do think side two is probably the finest 20 minutes of Heart in existence. I know there are other tracks that might be seen as more, that capture them as they are, but the Barracuda and stuff. But no, to me, this Portrait Records, this to me is my favourite one. And Mistral Wind is that quite long, isn't it? I think it's yes, nearly 7 minutes long. That is. It's an absolute epic song, absolutely beautiful. So my last one from 1978 is very different to the others, although the albums I've picked here, I've tried to not be as obvious. But this is another doorway album to an artist. And it's Tom Waits. How did I buy this? It had a thick spine. What? I was trying to boost my record collection, and there was something about gatefold sleeves with thick spines that made me thought that will make my record collection look wider. Seriously, there were quite a few things that I bought because of stuff like this, and I think it was a special deal. I knew nothing about Tom Waits, but I wanted to get into solo artists. Everything I listened to was bands, usually rock bands, and I was desperately trying to expand my horizons on my own terms, so without someone saying, you need to listen to this, you need to listen, and that happened a lot. And I didn't know anyone that knew anything about Tom Waits. So I chose this one, Blue Valentine, from 1978. So why? I didn't know that Somewhere was from West Side Story. Red Shoes by the Drugstore, Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis. That might have made me think that's a bit different. Romeo is Bleeding, $29. Wrong Side of the Road, Whistling Past the Graveyard, Kentucky Avenue, Sweet Little Bullet from a Pretty Blue Gun, and Blue Valentines. It was actually Kentucky Avenue because I was able to read the lyrics. You've got to hear that song, by the way. You've got to hear that song. Am I going to be able to find it? This is about, I think this is about this, if I've got this right. Yeah, this is about a friend who's in a wheelchair, and he's singing this song, and the string arrangement on this song is so beautiful. And he's talking about what they'll do when it's like an imaginary period. He just wants his friend to be well. I'll take the spokes from your wheelchair and a magpie's wings, and I'll tie them to your shoulders and your feet. I'll steal a hacksaw for my dad and cut the braces off your legs, and we'll bury them tonight in the cornfield. We'll put a church key in your pocket, and we'll hop that freight train in the hall, and we'll slide down a drain all the way in New Orleans in the fall. I find that song to this day so moving, about friendship and hope and caring for someone else. And his vocal, of course, this is when he'd really reached into this kind of really gravelly, no one else sounds like Tom Waits. But I love that. I absolutely love it. Another Gateway album, Doorway album even. It's a wonderful, wonderful record. So that are all my albums that I'm picking for this particular episode of 1978, because I will revisit it again. What nearly made it? Well, I could mention any of those classic albums, but the only one that almost did was probably Blondie's Parallel Lines, probably. But that's what I've picked. So let me know in the comments what you would pick. Should we? How many did I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Yeah, one for each day. What 7 albums would you pick from 1978? And try not to be too obvious. Think about what else you bought or you really like. I could have. What was the other one I nearly had? Because these are all ones I obviously, because I'm of a vintage where I was there. The other one I might have picked would have been Jade Warrior, and was it Song of the Sun, something like that? Way of the Sun. That's a great album, kind of almost like proto ambient stuff, really. But let me know what you would pick from 1978, and it'd be great to hear from you, because what you mentioned inspires me to play, because that's the whole point of this, really. But thank you all of you for being here. Thank you for subscribing and ringing that little bell. Thank you for becoming patrons and YouTube members and becoming part of the wider community and interacting with everyone. And obviously many of you are making friends now. That it's what's happening here is just marvellous. And remember, music is the healer and the doctor. And take care, all of you. Keep spinning those discs, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon.